Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Zombie Train. This is episode 264, and I'm your host, Ellis, otherwise known as Train Man. It's been a little while since I've made one of these, I know. I talked about the delays in this episode that we're watching of Under Construction. Of course, this footage is sped up a little bit. That'd be 8 times. But you can watch the episode number 48, where I talk about one particular comment, and I build a couple of good-sized hills. You might even call them mountains. Anyway, this episode is supposed to be about the A4 Pacific. That'd be LNER A4, yes, the British thing. Dwight D. Eisenhower. I got asked this question by Zonda599 Major back in episode 217, allegedly. But I'm beginning to doubt myself because I went back to episode 217 and there's not a comment here. So it may have been some other episode that I am... that I wrote down the wrong thing, or maybe this person deleted their account, or deleted their comment, or something. I don't know. It's very, I don't know. I am confused. No, it was episode 218. God damn it. I should have just checked one more forward. So, he says, out of curiosity, did you guys ever use ex-LNER A4 Dwight D. Eisenhower at the National Railway Museum up in Green Bay? Not sure if there would be too much that would have to be done to get it running right again, or even if it would be of any use, but it certainly could be useful in situations where speed is of the essence, and that's what we thought too. And the Toronto Raillands guys were actually ahead of us on this one. Even before we started the Zombie Train Incorporated, they were out looking for other engines, and they knew that there was an A4 in Canada. It was at the Canadian Railway Museum, I think, which is somewhere in the province of Quebec. I don't know Canadian geography that well, but it's in there somewhere. However, they got back to us at one point and said, hey, our K4 is missing. Our A4 is missing. And we said K4s are better. No, what we said was, well, that's your problem. And we sort of went, well, we can work together and get other engines running. We don't know where your A4 is. And they said, well, we know where your A4 is. It's in Green Bay. And we went, okay. And this was a point in time, and when we decided to act on this, which was later, farther down the line, we were at a point where it wasn't super important to have more power. Like, we did need more power, but it wasn't life or death. It was just at a point where, we're reaching a tipping point. It wasn't like, okay, we had passed an initial hump of, we need more engines, because we suddenly went from needing exactly one engine to needing way more than one engine. But we were reaching a lull where it was like, okay, our rebuild programs are coming up to speed. We've got engines, by the dozen that are ready to go in. We are slowly expanding and building facilities. It was fairly early on. And it was at this point where we were also exploring the Great Lakes quite a lot. I've talked about sort of the escapades with Sault Ste. Marie in the past. And part of it was actually exploring more into Michigan, like more deeply into Michigan, because we wanted more ports on the Great Lakes. And we had the not-so-brilliant idea to start using car floats, which went very well for a very short time, and then we lost a bunch of cars in the lake. So we decided to stop doing that for a while until we could get some more robust ferries, because the ferries that we used were not really ferries. They were more like barges with train tracks tacked on top of them. I don't know where the actual car ferries were at that point, although we had some later, and I'm not sure where they came from. I stopped being in charge of most of the water-based things and Great Lakes things at some point, not early on, but shortly after all this happened, because I was like, alright, somebody else can handle this, because clearly I'm not really a Great Lakes person. I can't do this. I just keep breaking things. One of these things, which was admittedly partly my idea, was an amphibious assault on the National Railway Museum, which is in Green Bay, because we decided that it wasn't worth stirring up the whole town for, because the town was mostly undead, if not all undead. We really didn't see any people, and we hadn't heard of anyone that knew anything about anybody living in Green Bay. So, after doing some radio blasts from offshore and not getting anything in return, we decided, okay, we'll go in, we'll motor up the river, and, we'll get into the museum. First problem, bunch of drawbridges, which we were able to sneak under with some smaller boats. But we got there. Second problem, not really an easy way to get onto the shoreline, even though the museum is on the shoreline. Once we had solved that problem by rolling up to a bridge, we got in there and realized, okay, we still have to get stuff out of here. We're not doing it by train, because that would be insane. The museum is connected, sorta. It's connected through another thing, which had cars that were fouling the switch. And so we realized, well, we've got to get something in there anyway to pull it out. So we did this amphibious assault basically just to set up a perimeter, and then we sent an engine around the long way to go and pull these cars out of the way so that we could start getting stuff out of the museum. While we were there, though, we realized our A4 is gone too. Now, this is where it sort of struck me. Both of the A4s missing. They went to England. They were put on a boat in August or September or October, somewhere in there, sometime in the late summer or early fall, and they were shipped to England. And so, yeah. So it was well, these engines are dead to us now. We're never going to get them. So, we might as well just forget about them. I've talked about our experience with the Britons in the past, and, it isn't good. The experience isn't good. I can summarize it in that they've mainly been a thorn in our side, but sometimes they've been much worse than that. And I wasn't about to go there to steal a couple of Pacifics that I probably didn't need. That we could build more Pacifics if we put our mind to it, and we could probably do that in the time that it would take to get across the ocean, find them, get them on the boat, and get back. Barring any interruptions by the Britons or anybody else who might be concerned with us literally making off with a pair of locomotives and taking them across an ocean to the U.S. While we were there, we did, and by we did, I mean not me, because I was like, well, that's not worth it. Plans were drawn up to go to England, seek out these engines, and as many other engines as we could get our hands on, and get them onto ships and bring them back. At this point in time, though, we didn't really have the ships that could do it. The most promising ones were either military vessels, which we weren't going to get our hands on, things that were diesel-powered, which were pretty ineffective for us. We couldn't really use anything that relied on any kind of fuel oil because we just didn't have very much of it. Especially for a transatlantic voyage. A double transatlantic voyage. And sailing ships, while they could hypothetically make the voyage, having one that's big enough that we can actually make the trip and load engines on was kind of out of the question. We didn't have anything big enough. So, plans were drawn up. There were a couple of alternative plans, but all of them were basically out of our scope completely, and yeah, we just decided, well, that's not worth it. We'll just leave them there. We'll build a couple of Pacifics and call them A4s, and they'll be our own A4s. They'll be our own things, and they'll be better. So, yeah, we realized it wouldn't be worth it. So that's why we didn't use the Dwight the Eisenhower, and that's why we also didn't use the Spirit of Canada, or whatever it's called. I had it written down over here somewhere. I forget. What is it? Something of Canada. Whatever. Now I want to know. Now I want to know. Now I'm sitting here and looking over everything and going, but what was it called? But what was it called? And I straight up don't know. The number I know was 610, 60010. Oh, it's Dominion of Canada. Thank you. And I don't know where I was going with that. That's just whatever. That's the other one. But I will point out now something else that was an annoyance, and possibly the most disappointing raid with all the hype that led up to it, of my short career in organizing Great Lakes things, was an assault on Petrovsky, if that's how you pronounce it, Petrovsky, which is way at the north end of the Great Lakes Central Railroad, which I'm not even sure how much service that railroad had. It sounds like it was a G&W property. I have no idea. That's just a guess. It just seems like, looking at the map, it seems like it'd be one of those. Great Lakes Central Railroad. We get to Petrovsky. Not Petrovsky, Petrovsky. I was even calling it Petrovsky earlier. I was adding extra letters. More extra letters. And so two things kind of happened at once to let us go to Petrovsky. One, there was a ship that was technically ours, a captain that was working for us, looking for railroad-related ports, who stumbled upon it in a storm, and didn't really do the preliminary to see if there was railroad, but saw it on the map. When he saw it on the map, realized that there was at least like a depot there. And he said, hey, there might be some railroad stuff here. Meanwhile, at the same time, we were looking over Michigan railroads, like I was talking about, and we realized, there's this line that goes to Petoskey in dead ends. I wonder if there's anything interesting up there. And we went, okay, the city is not that big. It's a decent size, but it's not really big. There are a few dozen blocks that have buildings, and there's a built-up-ish downtowny area. It's very much a suburbia-style town. And we figured, okay, well, let's just go, and we'll see if there's anybody there, and we'll see if we can, take whatever there is available. Now, at that point in time, we kind of figured there was something available. We learned very shortly thereafter, when we got there, that A, there was not a single human soul, and B, there was nothing of value. Like, nothing. Like, the place had already been ripped apart by people who presumably got there by boat. That's the only thing I could figure at this point, because it didn't look like anybody got in there by car, just based on what I was seeing, and it also just didn't seem like anyone had done the zombie train thing, and just taken a train. So, it was sort of a head scratcher, like,